Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my series of practice sessions for the Red Hat Certified Specialist in Containers exam EX188. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button. And if you enjoy the video, make sure you click like. Also, I want to give a quick reminder that these are practice sessions. It is my opportunity to go through objectives and try to explain them and do some examples of them if appropriate, with the point of assessing where I am knowledge-wise for the exam. My exam's in just over 2 weeks, and so this gives me time. If I don't feel confident talking about the objective, I can brush up on it before the exam. Or if I do feel confident on the objective, then I know I don't necessarily need to spend a whole lot of time reviewing these particular items. These are not tutorials, nor are they intended to be training material. However, you might find, if you're also preparing for this exam, kind of the way that I approach practicing some of the objectives, you might find that useful. You might get some ideas on how you can also practice the objectives for the exam, but these are not considered tutorials, because I myself am still learning. One other thing to note, I'm not sure if this exam is officially tied to a version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. I'm pretty sure it's going to be done on RHEL 8. Might mention it somewhere in here. I think I've read that somewhere. But anyway, I'm going to be doing the practicing on RHEL 8. The reason I mention it is, unlike RHCSA and RHCE, which are generally tied to a version of RHEL, if you happen to find this video in the future, it's currently end of February 2024, and you're looking at the EX188 exam and trying to get ideas on how other people have practiced for it, your exam might be different than what I have today. Or rather, your objectives might be different than what I have today. So still in the implementing images using Podman section, we're going to be looking at the understand and use environment variables inside images and understand the env instruction. So from what I have gathered from my practice of learning the basics of containers in this process, you kind of live and die by environment variables. Like a lot of the examples that I've seen in my research basically have you running your web server and your database server, and you have to feed different information, like to your database server. You'll feed it a username, or rather, if you were to run the like the MySQL container, or if you run the image and run a container off of it and don't feed it anything, it's going to error out. And if you look at your logs, it's going to say, hey, you need to include a certain set of environment variables. And these environment variables function just like they would on any other Linux system and also Windows system. Some of the environment variables that you deal with often on a Linux system is the path variable. It has several directories such as user bin, user local bin, bin and sbin, all that kind of stuff. That's an environment variable that if you want, you can change, but you don't necessarily find yourself doing that often. But they are different variables in your operating environment that have information that various applications and such use. And with your images that you are building for your containers, you can make use of those. So let's open the terminal. I'm going to find and download UBI 8. I think there will be an objective one day where actually I'm explaining this process that I'm going through to find my image, just because I don't have the fully qualified image name memorized. Maybe I'll do that one day. We'll go ahead and pull down this image, and then we'll build us our own image. All right, so we'll clear our screen. We'll start a container file, and we'll do from UBI 8. And for right now, we're just going to have it run the env command and exit. Or actually, better yet, user bin env. I don't want it to run as shell. I want it to actually run the command. So we'll change this to, otherwise it's going to run shell-c and then this, and I don't want it to do that. I want it to run literally that command and exit. So we'll build this image, give it a tag of env test, env test, and we'll run us a container. All right, and so that has printed out what the environment variables, current environment variables are for this this session. And again, I mean, you might have your application that is configured to look to environment variables for various aspects of its configuration, and you can dictate them in the container image to be defined. Let's inspect this image. Let's see what all the other, because I think there are probably some more things in that. It's all the different layers. Okay, so within the image's configuration, it is setting those two, and then we had a couple more that came out, and that makes sense. I mean, those are environment variables that are just going to be there for a Linux system. And so in my container file, I can dictate several others. So we'll do the env command. We'll do var1 equals foo, var2 equals foo2. Let's rebuild our image. Call it env test. We'll give it the tag of 2. Notice it made 2 more layers. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And let's run us a container. And we now see our environment variables are present. Now, if we want to make our container nice and efficient, or rather our container image nice and efficient, we can space separate these, I believe. You can also use the backslash to get another line if you want. So we'll build this. Tag it with 3. We'll run a container. We should get the same result. Yeah, it has both of the environment variables. You can specify environment variables at runtime for this. So I could do podman run e, we'll call it foo or var3 equals foo3, and there's the another environment variable. So again, you'll probably run into applications that need environment variables set, or if you're building your own image and the application that you're wanting your image to run to use certain environment variables, you can go ahead and set those. Probably would be a good idea. Maybe you want to have some default stuff, and then so that way the container will just run. But in an actual production environment, you would expect your users to specify certain environment variables. I guess we can put that to the test. So let's see what happens here. So I'm actually going to set var1 equals foo10. And as we see, that has replaced the var1 from the container image. So that might be another use for using the environment variable within the container. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the environment variables are, best of my knowledge, more of this is what's going to happen in the actual runtime of the container. If you want to use variables within your container file, you're actually going to use the arg statement for that. And let me go back into container file and we'll put this to the test. Let's say that I want to run echo. You'll see this syntax in some of the documentation with the variable. Instead of just $ variable, you have it in the brackets. I remember reading why you would do that. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it eliminates some potential gotchas with your variable. That will be something for me to look up. We're going to echo that into temp test txt, and we'll change our entry point to cat that file. So we'll build us an image. We'll call this environment test with tag 4. And let's see what we have when we run the container. Now that's interesting. I was not expecting that. What I was expecting was there not be any type of value for var1 for this, unless, no, that did what it said it would. When I was doing some other tests, I found that environment variables weren't working like that, and it was causing issues. Well, let's do a little bit more experimenting. This is kind of the beauty of your practice sessions, and as you're doing these for your own study, you'll run into things like this. That is interesting, because when I was doing some of my earlier training, what I learned was if you want to use variables within your container file, you'll do arg. I think it was arg. You know, let me try one other thing. I'm curious to see what happens here. Here is some text. Let's see what happens with this. So I'm setting that environment variable. I'm now using it for redirection. I'm just curious to see if we'll get a different result. We probably won't, but you can always wonder. Podman build -t embed test 5. Well, I stand corrected with that. You know, let's take a look at the man page real quick. Man container file. Oh, maybe if I spell it correctly, that will help. Sets environment variables. Yep, passed to. Oh, I guess it is passed to all future run entry point and CMD instructions. Let's do this again. Let's look up arg. Is that it for arg? Maybe arg wasn't what I was thinking of. Let's browse this real quick. I might edit this out of the video. I know I try to do my practice session videos kind of as is, but not sure if you necessarily want me to or want to take the time to watch me go through a man page. But there's arg instructions. It's talking about run. We know about run. Yeah, arg defines a variable. Users can pass it build time. Maybe that's the builder. So Podman build. The user specifies build argument. Container file outputs warning. Yeah. Okay, that kind of makes sense. There's a separate objective about having multi-stage container files, and that would make sense. You know, arg would only be valid for one of the from statements. So really, the use of arg is more for, because you can't like pass an environment variable into that. Well then, today I learned I actually can use environment variables within the container file. This is why I do the practice sessions. I had a misunderstanding. I was fairly sure that only args would work within the container file itself. So now I know. Well, hopefully you found this useful, and maybe you had a misunderstanding about environment variables and args as I did, and you're now enlightened. Or I might totally have it wrong, and if I do, feel free to put a comment in about how I have it wrong, and most importantly, what correct is, because if people watch the video and are using it as a training thing, even though I'm explicitly saying, no, this is a practice session, I'm not actually training you because I'm learning myself, obviously. They would appreciate seeing the correct information in the comments. So if you enjoyed the video or found it useful, do click like. I want to thank again returning subscribers for watching another video, and invite you to click subscribe if you have not subscribed to the channel yet. Thank you for your time, and as always, I will see you the next time.